Hey, this is Meleika of Evanston Live TV, and I am here with our mayor, Mayor Steve Hagerty, and I'm going to ask him a few questions. You all have had some burning questions out there. I've gone to city council meetings, and then I hear the conversation outside the council meetings. So I said, you know what? Let's go straight to the leaders of our community and get some answers. Okay, so we're going to turn around right here to our mayor.
All right.
Hi.
Hi, Meleika. Thank you for having me. You have the opportunity to do something that I don't get to do at city council meetings. Is I'm up at the dais, and I always see people out in the back, having a conversation. I have no idea exactly what that conversation is, so maybe you can illuminate me with questions and all of that. I certainly know there's lots of pressing issues around town that people care about and have opinions about and questions about. So I'm happy to spend a little time with you and answer them.
Well, one of the things I appreciate about you, Mayor Hagerty, is that you do take time to listen. Those who have had questions and issues, for some reason I don't know if it's fear or if they just really believe no one's going to listen to them, but I always say, I'm telling you, call Mayor Hagerty. He will actually listen to you, so we do appreciate that. And yes, there is plenty of conversation going on outside of the council meeting. That's where I like to hang out. You will find
I think that's where a lot of interesting conversations are going on, much more so than in the council chambers some nights.
Yes. All the other media outlets are, just recording what's happening up there at the bench. But the real deal is out there,
right
outside the doors.
Right.
So, let's get some of these questions answered.
Sure.
Evanston Live TV wants to serve the people, so let's get some answers here. So, Mayor Hagerty, let's start with, it's a big heated discussion about the water pumping station going into the 5th Ward.
Yep.
And, okay, first of all, is it true, does it stand to make $3 million?
So, let's just talk real briefly about how this all works. So when we sell water to different municipalities,
right,
they're paying for the operations of our station to get the water there. They're paying for the distribution lines, to get the water there. And there's one other component I'm forgetting right now. So basically, there's a calculation that's set up by the Waterworks Association of America. Okay, and there's a formula, and we follow that formula. And there, in that formula, can be some potential excess revenue, or you might call it income. Okay, to the city of Evanston, and that can run in the 8, 9, 10% range. Okay, and so when you say, hey, is there going to be a $3 million, surplus? Okay, yes, the city is going to generate water. We wouldn't be taking all the time and spending all the effort to sell water to all of these different communities if it doesn't benefit all of the residents of Evanston. And so it does. I can't tell you. I don't know the numbers well enough to tell you. Okay, is it 3 million? Is it 3 million? And part of the reason is because when we talk about that income, it's usually over a 40 year period. Okay, and so selling the water to Niles and Morton Grove will absolutely, over that period of time, generate a net positive cash flow to Evanston of several $1 million. And what happens is that money goes into our water utility fund. It's what's called an enterprise fund. And so the water utility plant, we all get a bill every year for our water and then our wastewater. And we're billed for that. And when we pay that bill, the money goes into the water utility fund. When the city manager and the city council do the budget every year, they decide if there's excess money in that fund that they want to then transfer into the general fund, then it's transferred into the general fund. But there's no direct correlation between, okay, we sell water to Niles and Morton Grove and we're going to make, let's say, $500,000, that $500,000 is going to go to A, B, or C. When it goes into the general fund, remember the general fund is covering our expenses for public works and police and fire and social service programs and all of that good stuff that the city does. So it's mixed together.
Okay. the organization that was formed, the West End Task for the water
Yes,
pumping station. Well,
yes.
they're not really against the water pumping station, but they really wanted the impact studies because they're concerned about the health risks. They are concerned if Evanston is going to make a nice profit, if it's going to actually go into the Fifth Ward. The Fifth Ward is in need. Family Focus is in need.
Right.
People are losing their property that's been in the ward for generations.
Right.
So Evanston is, it's a wealth. It's a gold mine right now because of our fresh water.
Right.
So people are wondering if any of the profits, and I know you just went into it,
Yep.
if any of the profits are going to go back into the Fifth Ward, which many believe bears the
Right.
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the profits, again, if there are some in the city manager or the city council decide to transfer money into the general fund, it's going, citywide, which includes obviously the Fifth Ward. I don't think we'd ever want to get into a situation as a city where we say, okay, we're going to prorate the amount of income that, the water utility itself is generating. The water utility sits in the 7th Ward, right? We have other pumping stations throughout Evanston. Do we say, okay, we're going to take a portion of that then and just put it back into that neighborhood? I do think it's different than the transfer station. And I think that's an analogy that some people use because the transfer station obviously has been there for a long time. We've had some court cases about it. There certainly are adverse, side effects of having the transfer station there. We had a settlement recently, and there was, my understanding, a commitment that settlement money, I think it was about $1.2 million, would go back into that surrounding area, which I think is pretty much sort of 5th Ward, 2nd Ward. It borders right there on Dempster. Is where that transfer. So I think that's why some people talk about, okay, so we're going to take the money and put it back here. Again, we have, if you think of utilities in a broad sense, we have utilities all over. We have streets all over. We have culverts and everything else around here. And I just don't think we want to get into the business of trying to prorate, revenue that's generated in different areas and say that only goes to, to this particular segment,
Okay.
or geographic area.
You got further conversation coming about that, right? Because people are concerned about the program cuts, possible program cuts. So.
I mean, look, we got tough. The city council and the city manager and all of us, we're going to have to make some tough decisions. We've got an estimated $3 million budget deficit going into 2019. Okay, so that's not this fiscal year. We have started the budget process much earlier. There is a methodology that's being followed. The council talked about it at the last council meeting. But there's 50 programs, right, and services that are being looked at. We're going to come out with a citywide survey. I will tell you right now, the survey will say none of these can be cut. They're all important because there are constituencies for all of these. This is not a good situation that you want to be in. But unfortunately, it's a situation that lots of municipalities are in. We're still in pretty good shape as a city overall. I think that there still remains a commitment amongst many that we need to continue to expand the tax base. We need to continue to have a vibrant, downtown. Two examples. Getting Target here to downtown. There are so many people in that Target. That is generating sales tax revenue, some of which comes back to us. At the end of the year, we're going to look at our sales tax and say, okay, how are we doing? But, that helps us increase our sales tax, having something like Target. We're also combating, more and more people shopping online. So there's less people spending money at the retail shops down here. The city council approved a liquor license for Binny's, which is where the old Whole Foods is, and that was controversial for some people. That was a tough because we don't want to see the character of Evanston change. We like the character of Evanston, and we know that Binny's obviously will bring additional revenue into the city. Our liquor tax is high here. They've got sales tax as well, but we also don't want to see it put smaller businesses, out of business. And they're offering a lot of character downtown or on the Main Street area. So we're going to have to wait and monitor that and see what happens.
Okay, we have questions
I
coming
bet.
so fast I can't
I bet.
keep up. Let's see. Lori Keenan says, shouldn't the survey include the associated costs so people know what they cost?
It should, Laurie, and my understanding from the city manager is that the cost is going to be on the survey. I'll double check that when I meet with him once a week. I'll double check that, but yes.
Yeah. So
it should. It should, because how else do you make a value judgment
right.
about something if I don't know what the cost is? So
right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Like lunch programs for the kids, that shouldn't even be up for discussion.
Well, that one was talked about at the city council because again. The city puts some money into that program, but we also get state money, and I don't know if that flows through to the feds, to the state, and then to us. Mm-hmm. So obviously we get more bang for the buck for that, right? If it's not just all of our money and somebody else is paying, and there's a cost share. So again, these are going to be really, really tough conversations and decisions. Yeah. I am pleased that just as a city we're being proactive in doing this with plenty of time to really have some thoughtful conversations and make sure we hear from all the different voices around the city.
Okay, yeah, once you all put the figures out there, I think you're probably going to get the most feedback from the people than ever before, because people are really concerned about the program cuts. And
everybody has and the thing is that everybody has a different opinion, it's I mean, we have people email all the time that say, okay, I know how to solve the budget crisis, do A, B, and C. And if we put that out there publicly and said, okay, we're going to do A, B, and C because Joe said we should do A, B, and C. And tons of other people would say, oh my God, you can't do A, B, and C. And they might say, do D, E, and F. And,
What, you haven't sat down with Janad?
I have seen his posters. He's brought his posters.
Yes,
so,
yes. He is something. We're going to try to hurry because I got to meet with Alderman Rozelle soon about the Harley Clarke. The impact studies.
Yes.
That for the Fifth Ward in
Yes.
regards to the water pumping station.
Yeah.
Huge debate as to why. I mean, they requested it, so they want to know why they're being ignored, why they can't get the answers, why they can't get that information. When it could be a health hazard, possibly. Yeah. They want to know.
Yeah. So the crux of the issue with that is, are we following sort of a standard, typical, almost commercial kind of project where we'd have impact studies for traffic or on the utilities and so forth, or is this outside of the typical commercial project and within a municipal exemption? Okay, and the code, as I understand it and have been told, allows for a municipal exemption. And what that means is it means if the city has something that's a priority, the city can say, okay, we're going to put this, somewhere. And there still has to be some notification and all of that. And I do absolutely understand that there's been a lot of feedback and pushback and saying, hey, we don't think the process was very good in this case. I get that, and I've heard that. The municipal exemption basically says if you own or operate, a facility that you're putting up, you have the municipal exemption. That exemption means you don't have to do all of these impact studies and everything else. I know there's concern and there's fear about, the pumping station, and I don't even know if I could possibly alleviate those other than to say, like, the city's been in the water business for over 100 years, and these are pretty straightforward plants that you're putting up, whether it's the pump station or the main water plant, and we know a lot about this stuff, and so where people say, oh well, I want a impact study for the traffic. What's the traffic going to be? Not many people are coming to a pumping station. Many people are coming to a pumping station. Now, on this one, the concerns are, well, wait, is there eventually going to be, a splash pad or something else? here in the park. And I am, again, when people say, hey, Mayor, could I sit down and get some time with you? I generally say, yeah, and so I am meeting with them to talk about, okay, are there any specific issues, and let's see what we can do. I can't change that the pumping station is going to be built there. That's going to happen. But there may be other issues that they have, and we're going to sit down and talk about that. But that's the crux of it is, hey, is this a typical, commercial development where you'd have all these impact studies, or is this something that's governed by the municipal exemption? And the city, legal staff and others feel strongly that this is a municipal exemption. The city will be operating this facility.
Okay. Jesse Sales is encouraging you to join the fight to keep the mental health programs in Evanston. So he's like, please join in fighting with them to keep that program.
Can I just say something on that? So Jesse, I appreciate the question. Mental health is a really, really big issue, and my wife and I have supported lots of organizations and everything for a long time here in town, and I'm so proud of the nonprofit community and all the work that's done in my 1 year as mayor. And today is the 1 year anniversary. Hard to believe. So for those of you that think, oh my God, I don't want Hagerty anymore, three more years. But in my 1 year, I have seen up close and personal mental health challenges that people in our community have. And I agree, we need to continue to do more to help people in this regard. We have people that attempt, suicides. We have, people that clearly need, assistance, and we need to do more to keep helping people with mental health challenges.
Okay. Jess Sales said thank you. And our last question, because Evanston Live TV, got to keep it rolling.
Yeah. And the mayor talks a lot, so yes.
The Harley Clarke Mansion.
Yes.
Which the city has been going over. It seemed like for years.
Oh, I think it's over. I mean, people have been involved from the very beginning, but I think it's over 5 years.
Yes.
Quite some time.
So the organization, Lakehouse Gardens organization, I met with them, and they're willing to purchase the property. I guess at one point the property was for sale for $2 million or something.
I don't think the city ever put a price on it. A long time ago, when they first went out of the gate on this, they had approached, I think, Jennifer Pritzker, who, her family is a billionaire, really is a preservationist. She's done amazing work around town, including a lot of support for the Evanston Arts Center that we have now on Central, for the YOU headquarters. She was very instrumental in helping that come about. But she has a history of preservation, and so when she was approached, I think as part of her proposal, she said to the city, hey, I'm willing to give you, I think it was $2 million or a little less than $2 million for the mansion. But I don't think there was an appraisal on it, and we went out and put a for sale sign in front of it.
Okay. So this organization, they're willing to purchase it, raise all the funding so that it doesn't cost Evanstonians any money, the taxpayers any money. Yeah. And they want to turn it into a public building where kids can come and learn about growing food and all sorts of things. Right. I mean, they walk me around the property, and to be honest, I live in the 7th Ward. I've driven by the Harley Clarke Mansion a million times. I've never been inside. Didn't really know what was going on over there, but they walked me through the property, not through it, but around it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And it's absolutely
stunning.
Beautiful.
I love it.
It is stunning, and they have some serious vision of what they want to do and to get the community out there, because I know I take advantage of the lake. I walk the lake all the time, but many people in Evanston do not. They'll go to Chicago. For some reason, they don't feel like they can go to Evanston Beach. So they want to change that and just turn it into a money making for the city beautiful property
Yeah,
where
yeah.
kids can come and learn,
Right.
adults, the elderly, everyone.
Yeah.
So,
And just one correction, I
Okay.
don't think they, just so people that are watching this understand, I don't think the Evanston Lakehouse and Gardens groups wants to turn this into like some profitable money-making venture. Yes, they need to make sure operationally it breaks even or makes a little money so they can
Right.
continue to maintain the upkeep. But this is really a community, their offer is really a community-led
Yes.
effort, as opposed
Yes.
just to differentiate, as opposed to, a private developer coming in who wants to literally make a profit.
yeah, they want this lake house to be a house for those of us who don't have a lake on the house. That this could be our house.
It's a true community. It's a true community house. I mean, again,
Yes.
if you think of up the shore in Winnetka has a community house. It's a house that's used by everybody in the
Yes.
community. I mean, you could sort of make the analogy, but our house would be better than the Winnetka house because it's on the lake.
Right. So why did the city vote against the terms? From what I understand, you all worked with them on the terms in the lease.
City staff,
Okay.
worked with them, but there is a nuance that's important to understand when city staff present memos to the city council. Oftentimes those memos will say, we recommend you put a stop sign up here or change the speed limit or whatever the issue is. In the case of Harley Clarke, because the council pretty much said, we want to handle Harley Clarke, that's how they handle the RFPs. To my knowledge, the staff memo that went to city council did not say we recommend, and it matters. So I don't think city staff presented that and said we recommend. Somebody could go back and look at the memo if I missed that, but rather it presented to the city council. Here's the contract and where it stands.
Okay. Can they come back recommended?
Well, that was the big issue at the last meeting, where there were a lot of people that got up and spoke in favor of the Evanston Lakehouse and Garden Group, hoping that one of the aldermen who had voted against it when it went down in a 7-2 vote, one of the aldermen would reintroduce it for what's called reconsideration. But for that to be done, you still have to have 5 votes. And I think we have really good council members in Evanston, and like any of us, everybody's got a different opinion about things. But as a group, I think it's a really good group. The council member that would have reintroduced it knew that it didn't have the votes. It didn't have the 5 votes. So
Why not?
I think, well, to get to why, I mean, I think there's a couple things. I think one, there's history to this house where, it was leased for 40 years to the Evanston Arts Center for $1 a year. Part of that agreement was the Evanston Arts Center was supposed to maintain it. The Evanston Arts Center didn't maintain it over the years. It started to deteriorate. The city, you could also say, didn't hold them accountable and say, wait a second, remember part of the deal, you get it for $1, you're supposed to maintain it. And so it got to the point where there were some real concerns about health and safety, life safety, code issues there. Ultimately, they moved out, and the question was, what do we do with this? So I think that history is important because, again, it was, a community group, so to speak, in the Art Center. It was there, and they struggled to maintain it. And they had a really worthy purpose, right? I mean, this is an art community, right? Your mom's,
Right.
one of our very notable artists here in the community. And so I think that could be something that's in the back of people's minds. Secondly, I think there was legitimate concern among some about the financial viability. When the group, came last, summer, and there was conversation, it was, do we have 6 months to do the RFP process or 2 months? And, this group and others pushed and said it should be 2 months. And the reason it should be 2 months is, we want to know if we are going to win and get the contract that, we have between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is the end of the year. People are generous, and we can raise money. So ultimately, it was a 2-month process. I think they were notified in November. Okay, the city council said to the city manager, go ahead and try to negotiate a contract here. That process obviously took several months, and they came back, and at the end of the day, I think the council was looking and saying, geez, if there's really community support for this, why is it that, we're only seeing the group with, I don't know, $12,000 or so in cash at that time, a month or two ago, and a little more than $100,000 in pledges. I think, again, I don't have a magic mirror or anything here, but I think, if that group had come and said, okay, we've got, $1 million in pledges. And I know there's some concern where people say, well, the city negotiated and said it had to be cash and everything. One of the other issues certainly was that, your proposal said $5.3 million. And the first iteration of the contract that came before the council was for $2 million. And council members, and even I said something at that meeting, say, I thought the contract or the proposal was 5.3. Why are we only showing $2 million? And then they said, well, we're gonna raise the other, but we want to put $2 million in the contract. Look, naturally, from negotiating a contract, you want to negotiate the best terms you can for yourself. And so I think potentially I wasn't involved in negotiations, but I think potentially that's, what was happening here. They ultimately came back the second time around and it said, we will raise the $5 million, but it was over a decade. And again, I think a lot of people said, wow, a whole decade to raise the $5 million. We've had a lot of successful campaigns around Evanston. We have generous people here in Evanston that all have different interests. And some people's interest is preservation. And to my knowledge, I don't think we have a big preservation campaign going on right now, although there is concern certainly about the family focus of the old Fifth Ward foster school, which is preserving a part of the history, right, of Evanston. So you could potentially have that, and I think Alderman Ruth Simmons spoke to that during the meeting in her concern with competing campaigns. But my personal experience has been with some of the fundraising around town is that you can raise, $5.3 million in a 3-year period. YOU raised $16 million. And, I think you could have said, hey, I'm going to raise $5 million in 3 years. I want a 4th year just to have an additional year to collect the money. And then I guess the last concern I heard and sensed was the period of time, just the period of time in which this work would be done, and I think people, they want to commit to a path and just know, okay, this is the path, and that there is a time frame for that path. And this time frame was so wide, there was concern about it. And I think there's some concern about, do they have a plan where they truly could be operationally viable, meaning that they could, generate enough revenue annually from the operations to cover their expenses, or perhaps a little more, so they can invest back into the house over time. And I think that ties back to concerns from years ago about the Evanston Arts Center.
Okay, so what do they need to do now to get back on track? And a question came through, what are your feelings on you personally on the proposal?
Yeah, so what do they need to do to get back on track? I think it's uncertain. Let me just make this statement. I think it's uncertain what's going to happen with the Harley Clarke Mansion. I can't tell you. Again, I don't have the crystal ball. I can't tell you. My general sense is it's one of two potential things. It is somehow this group comes back, and how do they come back? To me, I think they've got to go out there and be able to demonstrate. We've got pledges of $1 million, or more, where it really shows that, hey, there really is some community support here, and then get the ear of some aldermen that will champion that. Because the other alternative is one that's equally tough for a lot of people, which is to salvage or deconstruct the mansion. I imagine you'd use like Evanston Recycling Warehouse or a rebuilding warehouse, but to salvage the mansion, demolish and then restore it to parkland, which some people would argue, you know what? Historically, that's what it's been. We are about parkland along the lake, and so to create a more beautiful park and to remove this. But for a lot of people, preservationists and other people, like that's a part of the history of Evanston, and I personally have always been on that of that opinion. And I've written a lot about this. I'm on record in a lot of places about the Harley Clarke Mansion that I'd like to see the building saved. Personally, I always thought, well, I think the only way really to save it is if you allow private investment into it. It still should have a public use. It shouldn't be some private club or sold and be some private residence or anything like that. But I think it would be a beautiful place for a restaurant or an event space, and to have a couple rooms and all of that. The Pritzker proposal originally, I thought it was an interesting proposal. 50 rooms sounded like a lot, but that vote that night years ago was really just, should the city manager sit down and negotiate? And as the Evanston Lakehouse Garden Group said, negotiations aren't easy, and they go back and forth, and everybody needs to get something that collectively works. Obviously, we never got there in the first place. I don't think that there's a movement afoot to put private investment in there, so I think you're left with these two options. Again, I think it's a beautiful building. And it's a part of the history of Evanston, and again, I've written about it. I'd like to see the building saved. I just think we're at a point right now where I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, but I do think for Evanston Lakehouse and Gardens Group, if they come back and say, look, we will raise, the 5.3 million. We are going to raise it in 4 years. We're going to raise it in 3 years. We want that fourth year just to collect. So we will be collecting money over that period of time. Maybe we put some markers in place along the way. But it's that would be more defined. And if they could come and also say, look, I've already can tell you that we've got signed up $1 million in pledges. I think given the choice, okay, are we salvaging and demolishing the mansion, or are we going to give this group a chance, and hopefully for the skeptics that are out there, be pleasantly surprised.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mayor. I got to run and meet one of your council members.
Thank you, Meleika, and thank you for everything you do. Again, I mean, on these issues, you're really involved, and you're talking to a lot of people, and there's lots of different perspectives. I appreciate that you're capturing them.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time for Evanston Live TV and always listening. That's what we love about you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you all, I'm headed over to Alderman Revelle, talk more about the Harley Clarke Mansion and get her input on some other budget happenings here in Evanston. So we're going to get going, and you guys tune in. I got to meet her at 3:45. I got to fly across town. All right.